All right, so now we have a character on a screen and it moves rather than just a staring contest. And we're well off to being able to create some character that we can control. So what I'm going to do is open up the script for that character. And as we saw last time here, we've set a velocity variable and we've given it a vector 2, an x and y component so that it can move. And then we use the move and slide function to actually make that movement. This is kind of like setting the speed, and this is saying go. So now what we need to do is to not automatically do that, but do it when I want to move and move in the direction that I want to move. So before we get to having a look at that, we need to set up how we're going to move. And Godot gives us the option to be able to do this in multiple different ways. So I could be using the keyboard, maybe I want to use WASD, or maybe I want to use the arrow keys, or maybe I want both options. Or maybe I've got an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller plugged into my computer, or I'm on a Switch, or I'm on my phone and I'm using the touch screen. So rather than have all of these permutations in programming, Godot lets us set up what's called an input map. And an input map is basically just saying, hey, all of these things will trigger left, and all of these things can trigger right. So we set that up to save ourselves some programming in the future. And you'll do that under the project menu, project settings. You'll up will come this general here at the beginning, but just shift over to this tab, input map. And at the moment, what we do is we set up actions that kind of are represented by a whole bunch of different keys. There are no actions here by default, although there's a bunch of built-in ones that we'll ignore for now. But I want to make a few actions, so I got to think about what my player can do. So I'd like my player to be able to move left, so I'm going to add a new action. Just type left here and add, or hit enter, and it'll pop up. I want my character to be able to move right. So I'm going to make a right one here. Later on, I know that I'm going to want my player to be able to jump. So I'll do that. And maybe, you've got shooting things or you've got crouching or all sorts of other things. I think we'll stick with just these three actions at the moment. These are the possible things that my player can do. And now I get to add events that will trigger this left action, if you will. So we can do it over here with this little plus saying add event, and nicely the Godot's just going to start listening for us. So traditionally we will often move with the arrow keys or WASD for a lot of people. Because I want to help out lefties and righties, I'm going to do both. And right now it's listening for an input. So all I have to do is tap the key on the keyboard I want to make move left. So I hit left and you'll see it will come up the left one, and you can hit OK. And we'll see that the left arrow key is going to trigger left, but we can also add another one here if we want. And I can say, well, maybe A will do that as well. And if you had, say, a joystick or a D-pad or a Nintendo Switch controller or whatever you like, you can just plug that in and make the motion to the left, and Godot is going to be listening for that input. So really handy. Now I can go on to the right and say, well, I'd like the right arrow to be able to do that, and I want D to be able to do that. And for jump, let's go with the up key for jump, and also I can use W if we're doing that. So now these keys are going to trigger this action, and we can use that in our coding to be able to control the direction that we're moving. So we just close that, and now I'm back to my script here. So at the moment we saw this odd movement here. You may remember if I wanted to move left, I would just change the X to say something like -200. And then we wouldn't move any in the Y, so 0 there. So that's going to move me directly left, and it's going to do it automatically. But I don't want to do it automatically. I only want to do it when I'm pressing the left action key, which is arrow or A. So let's introduce our first kind of one of the big ideas in computer programming, and this is allowing the computer to make a decision or to change something. To do different actions based on a statement we give it, and it's called an if-then statement. And it looks a little bit like this. We say if something is true, I don't use the something is true, but if something is true, and it doesn't have to have parentheses there, but usually it's a function or some kind of statement. And then we start with the colon here. This is kind of like saying, if this is true, I want you to do the following thing or things. It could be a list of things that you want to have happen. And when I hit enter, you're going to notice that it tabs in, it indents in here. Now make sure you don't use the space bar for this. Either Godot will automatically do it for you, or if it doesn't, you can use the tab key because you want to see that little thing here. Because GD script and Python programming language both work the same. They use this white space, this kind of formatting, in order to understand what things are part of something else. So here I'm saying if something's true, I want to do something. And if I want to do something else, I would keep that tabbed in. And I would keep on tabbing it in, oops, until I wanted to stop these conditions, because these things are only going to happen if this is true. Then I simply go backspace, and now it's lined up nicely here. And then the following thing is not dependent on this if statement. So let's get rid of that for a second here. So the if something is true, in this case, the thing I want to do is move left. So I would tab that line in there. This is my moving left, and I want to move left if something's true. The thing that I want to be true is that I'm pressing the left key. And we've got that all set up in Godot as well. It's input, period, notice a capital I there, is action pressed. And you can see Godot wants to help you out here. Because remember, we set up those actions there. And if I put the quotation marks here, you'll actually see the actions that I just built, the jump, the left, the right, and then there's a whole bunch of these built-in ones, which we're going to ignore for now. So I want to move left if the action I'm pressing is left. There we go. So if is this thing true? It's kind of like a question. Then I want you to do the following, only one of these things. And at the end, I want you to move and slide regardless. So if I press play, you'll see no movement anymore. And when I press the left key, I start moving left. Now you'll notice that I'm stuck and I just keep moving left because I haven't told the computer to do anything different. But with just that, we can grab those two lines. I'm going to copy that and paste it here and say, well, I also have the other option of if I'm pressing the right key. Well, if I'm pressing the right action, then I want to move in the opposite direction, which in this case was positive number, 200. All right, and you're now moving back and forth with your control, which is getting pretty cool. But we've got lots more to do to make this a more realistic looking player. It's where we want to have it fall, we want to have it jump. We're going to be making a platforming character, so we need to kind of build a little physics engine for ourselves. But let's take care of this. First of all, I've got an issue of I can't stop. So I want a third thing here, and that is going to involve me not pressing the left or right. Unfortunately, I don't have a is action pressed nothing. And if it did, it would still run into some problems because we're going to later on see that this 0y is going to cause us issues. But let's leave it for now. So we can also have what's called an else statement. And an else statement is kind of the if this is not true, then do this. It creates kind of a two-way road here. So we say if something is true, then do it. Else, which is if that's not true, I can do something else. And these two are tied together, kind of joined. So you don't need an else something else at the moment, but we will need that in a second. So I'll say else. Well, we can imagine that I would want to stop. Oops, there we go. Now, if we play it like this, you're going to see a little bit of a problem here, and we'll find out the logic. I can move right, and I stop, that's good, but I can't move left anymore. Pressing the left key does nothing. And that's because, as I mentioned, these two things are tied together, the if-else statement. So I've said here, if I'm pressing right, then move to the right, else, if I'm not pressing right, then I should stop. And up here I've said if I'm pressing left, then move to the left. But if I'm pressing left, I'm probably not pressing right. So I've given the computer some conflicting information. I've said go left, but here I've said if you're not pressing this key, stop. So go left, stop, go left, stop, go left, stop. And unfortunately, the last thing takes priority. So I actually want to kind of join all three of these things together. I want to say, well, if I'm pressing left, then go left, or if I'm pressing right, then go right. But if I'm not pressing either of these things, then I want to stop. And fortunately, they give us a really nice way of making what's called a chained conditional. And that's with the elif statement. So an elif statement basically joins all of these together. So I can say, if I'm pressing left, go left, else if I'm pressing right, go right, and if I'm not doing either of those things, then I would like to stop. And it kind of comes down to an idea of an if statement is an if else statement is like a fork in the road. There's only two possibilities. You ask a question here. If it's true, you do this thing. If it's not true, you do this thing. Whereas an elif statement can have an if, but can have another option and another option and another option. And then you can have the final else statement saying, if none of these are true, then go and do that. So it's really handy, that else if or elif statement in Python and in GDScript. Now, if I play, we should have a character that, yes, is moving along here very nicely. Perfect. All right. And I'm going to stop there, and we'll, in the next video, have a look at getting some gravity for some falling here.